The storm had come from nowhere, as storms often did on Kepler 442b. Evan hunched deeper into his thermal jacket, watching the purple snow swirl against the reinforced canvas of his research tent. 3 months into his xenobiology assignment, and he still wasn't used to the planet's violent weather patterns. A sound outside made him freeze. Not the wind, something else. Something deliberate. He reached for his plasma torch, fingers trembling slightly as he unzipped the tent flap. The beam of light cut through the blizzard, illuminating a figure collapsed just meters away. Evan's breath caught. The being was humanoid but distinctly alien, skin with an iridescent blue sheen, dressed in what looked like ceremonial robes completely inadequate for the freezing temperatures. Jesus, he muttered, stumbling forward. The figure looked up and he found himself staring into eyes that were entirely silver, without pupils or whites. A female, he thought, though he couldn't be certain with alien species. She tried to speak, but her lips, darker blue than the rest of her, were trembling too violently. Evan didn't think. He just acted. Hooking his arms under hers, he dragged her toward his tent. Inside, with the flap sealed behind them, he could finally get a proper look. She was smaller than him, maybe 5.5 feet tall, with what looked like delicate gills along her neck that fluttered weakly. Her robes were soaked through, and she was shaking so hard he could hear her teeth chattering. A strangely human sound from such an otherworldly face. Okay, Evan said, more to himself than to her. He grabbed his emergency thermal blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. You're going to be fine, just stay with me here. The alien girl's silver eyes tracked his movements with sharp intelligence despite her obvious distress. She said something in a language that sounded like wind chimes and rushing water. I don't understand, Evan said helplessly. He activated his universal translator, but it just beeped an error. Her language wasn't in the database, which meant she was from one of the tribes his team hadn't made contact with yet. Perfect. He did what he could, changed her out of the wet robes, keeping his eyes averted, though her physiology was different enough that modesty seemed almost irrelevant, wrapped her in dry blankets and positioned her near his portable heater. As color slowly returned to her skin, it shifted from dull gray-blue to a vibrant cyan. She watched him with those unsettling silver eyes. I'm Evan, he said, pointing to himself. Evan. She tilted her head, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost musical. Evan. The name sounded strange in her mouth, but recognizable. He smiled despite himself. Yeah, and you are? She touched her chest. Hannah. It took him a moment to realize she was probably translating her actual name into something his mouth could pronounce. The odds of an alien naturally having a human name were astronomically impossible. Hannah, he repeated, and she nodded, a gesture that apparently transcended species. Over the next hour, as the storm raged outside, something unexpected happened. Through gestures, basic drawings in the condensation on his equipment, and the slow, patient repetition of words, they began to communicate. Hannah's people, he learned, lived in the mountains. She had been traveling to a sacred site when the storm caught her. The robes weren't just ceremonial. They were supposed to regulate temperature, but hers had malfunctioned. Technology. The revelation hit Evan hard. His team had assumed the local species were pre-industrial. But if they had temperature-regulating clothing, Hannah seemed to read something in his expression. She reached for her robe, still drying by the heater, and pulled out a small device. It looked organic, almost grown rather than built, but when she touched it, holographic symbols appeared in the air between them. Complicated, Evan whispered, echoing the word from his mission briefing. First contact protocols were strict. Observe but don't interfere. Document but don't engage. And absolutely under no circumstances, share technology with species below a certain development threshold. But Hannah's people clearly weren't below that threshold. They just had technology humans didn't recognize as technology. Hannah watched him wrestle with this realization. Then she did something that surprised him more than anything else that night. She smiled. It was a distinctly human gesture, though her teeth were slightly different, more uniform and pearl-like. She pointed to him, then to herself, then made a gesture that encompassed the tent. She spoke a string of words in her language, then struggled to find something he would understand. Finally, she settled on combining several basic words they'd established. We same? Different? But same? Evan felt something shift in his chest. She was right. Despite everything, Different planets, different biologies, different evolutionary paths. Here they were, two thinking beings, communicating in a tent while a storm tried to kill them both. Finding common ground? Yeah, he said quietly. Same. The storm continued for 3 more hours. In that time, Hannah taught him 7 words in her language. He taught her 15 in his. She was a faster learner. They shared food. His protein bars made her laugh, though he wasn't sure why. And she pulled out something that looked like dried fruit, but tasted like cinnamon and starlight. When the storm finally broke, Hannah stood at the tent entrance, her robes dry and apparently functional again. The device she'd shown him was tucked away. She looked at Evan for a long moment, those silver eyes seeming to see right through him. She spoke carefully in English, words he'd taught her. Thank you, Evan. Will you? He hesitated. Will I see you again? Hannah's smile was enigmatic. She touched her chest, then his, then pointed to the mountains. An invitation? A promise? Both? Then she was gone, moving through the purple snow with impossible grace, leaving only footprints that the wind quickly erased. Evan stood in the tent entrance long after she vanished. He should report this. Protocol demanded it, but something held him back. The image of Hannah's device, the implications of her people's hidden technology, the fact that humans had grossly misunderstood this entire species. Things had definitely gotten complicated, but as he watched the alien sun rise over the mountains, painting the snow in shades of gold and violet, Evan found himself hoping, desperately hoping, that he would see those silver eyes again. Because complicated he was learning might be worth it.